Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Vet Chats, where we help veterans share their awesome stories and help make the veteran community a better place. Also, Vet Chats is now on Reese Across America Radio. We will be played Mondays at 9 p.m. and Saturdays at 3 p.m. They have a ton of great veteran content that I'm sure you'll love. You can find them at Reese Across America Radio, iHeartRadio, or the Odyssey app. Thank you all for joining. Tonight we have a very special guest, someone that I have been waiting to have on for quite a while, so I hope you guys will stick around. His name is Mike Kim. He has been researching and working with veterans since the 90s. He is a former director at the Readjustment Counseling Services at the VA. He's been in and out of uniform, quite a few uniforms. He's been in the Coast Guard, the Marine Corps, the Army, and he's an overall expert in veteran readjustment culture and life. So I'm really excited to have him on and have a great conversation. All right, Mike.
Do you see me?
I can't see you. Hello, everyone. Hey, Ryan. Shout out to Ryan for connecting
It'll
us.
help. It'll
Now
help
I see your screen. There you are.
Finally. Well, there's a difference. 54, 55 soon. I'm still working on a typewriter. You know what I mean? So don't blame Jenna. Blame me. All right? Because I didn't know I had to update this thing. But anyway, I'm glad I'm here.
Yeah, I've never had that problem before, so I'll have to add it to my, my cheat sheet when I have guests on. But I'm so glad to have you on, and thank you for being here. How was your weekend? Also, I wanted to let everyone know that you are currently in college. You're in your doctoral program, so he is very busy and studying and writing papers. So how is that going?
3.967, but that's why I'm constantly on it, because I don't want it to drop to a 3.8. It's like I get pissed off. But anyway, I'm joking. I'm joking. No, but it's real. It is a 3.96. But anyway,
Wow.
the thing about it is I'm passionate about my studies, and it's all about like veterans, war, the military industrial complex. So I've been very passionate about this since I was a kid. So that's the only reason why I'm really doing well with this, because I started when I was 4 years old.
Wow. And how did you start when you were 4?
Well, I learned about the Revolutionary War, and so that was the big thing. And as I got older, I started to recognize that it wasn't just about like the battles, right? It was about the soldiers readjusting, to develop the colonies. And then I was learning about the Shays Rebellion, which really is like the first or the second big kind of like revolt that we have, that even George Washington wanted to suppress, because basically it was disenfranchised veterans who were getting screwed by an unjust tax. And it was like what happens now, right? Politicians, they'll get involved with like business people and the agendas by the corporate folks. And that, I mean, back then it was, I don't know if they were whalers or certain merchants or bankers, but they were pushing, Congress for this certain type of tax. And then, veterans just kind of like gathered up, and they were like, we served in the Revolutionary War, and we're keeping our farms. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, that's
And so
pretty heavy subject for a 4-year-old.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't get that information until I was a little older, but my fascinations were like the battles, like Bunker Hill, Yorktown, and I'd say, when are we going, to Yorktown? And my parents would just say, we're not like rich, and I'm just thinking like, Yorktown, like my son says, I want to go to Paris, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's different,
Yeah.
So I've been a big fan of the Revolutionary War, and then just like, as I got older, just recognizing from what Vietnam veterans experience, right? So they were much more cohesive for their own reasons, right? There were like black vets for social justice. Like I'd go to their Brooklyn, when I got older, to their like house in Brooklyn and hang out. And, there was just like, Vietnam Veterans Against the War. There were all these other groups, but they all pretty much kind of came together when it really counted. And I think the problem, and I'm just going to say it with our community in many ways, is that, we're just so fragmented, and we're so caught up with so many different agendas. But anyway.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I was actually thinking about that the other day, how there's so many different divisions of the veteran community. And it's almost like we're kind of over identifying with like just, I mean, even myself, I could say like the millennial veterans, there's still that overarching of all the veterans. But to initially bring people in, I feel like, especially the younger generations, we want that niche. We want something that directly calls to us, just to even get people in the door so they know, like, there's almost to have that sense of belonging. Yeah. How do we kind of, how could we get over that? Or is that just like my way of getting people in the door?
Well, I think what you're doing is great because, and I'm not just saying that because you were on my show and you did well on there. I'm not just saying that. No, I think that hey, I am not against, hey, like Veterans for Raccoon Rights. That's great. I mean,
Yeah.
that's fine. That's cool. But like, when I look at certain vets that use the platform and they use the attention, like the standards, I don't know how it is now, but I even did a report on it with Wounded Warrior Project, something like that. I'm not saying the new Wounded Warrior Project. I don't know what they're up to, but like back in, 2007, 2008, and it was just like this veteran agenda, but was it really for the veteran, right? And so I always have to ask that question when I'm working with someone or when I'm reading a book or when I'm reading military fiction. What is this person trying to communicate, Like I just like found like this book, after I got back from Iraq. I shouldn't say, it took a little while before reading it, and I knew the author. I'm not going to really mention it now. I mean, maybe I will, because it won book of the year, right? So my son could get access to this book in the library, and it talks about, why the title, unless they took it out, it says why didn't we have whores, about like Vietnam, sex workers during the Vietnam War, and basically the book chapter like mentions it, and there's nothing really constructive there other than saying that. And my stepmom, suffered a lot being in the Vietnam War, and she prematurely died of Agent Orange. And my dad's Korean War and all this stuff, and they had a lot of war in them, and I'm just saying that story will never get out there, but this guy who has no connection with the Vietnam War uses some kind of catchy, you know, phrase or something like that to pump a book out. That's my thing, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
That's
I think that also kind of brings up another point of like, whose stories are we telling? Whose stories are getting that attention? Like the mainstream, you know, portrayal of veterans in the media, and you know, kind of like that narrative that's being told.
right. And how it's being packaged, and how, you know, how there's in many ways, right, profiteers, whether they're within our community or they're civilians, right? They're these profiteers and
Hmm.
opportunists, and so not that I want to like say, gosh, if, you know, I don't know, if I got like 3 million views, like, you know, my best friend, you know, like, and he's, you know, he created his own brand, you know, Rudy Reyes. No one packaged him. You know, he created his own brand, and finally, you know, he's getting recognition. But like, I mean, that guy, you know, was he played himself in like that HBO series, Generation Kill, you know, and
Hmm.
I mean, it's entertainment. But I mean, I don't think there's anything bad with that type of entertainment. I just think that when people use it for something that's just not authentic, it becomes problematic.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, definitely, and it's exploiting a very vulnerable population. You know, people that so in our Facebook group, we always have kind of those like gimmicks that'll come in and post or try to sell something, and I'm very protective of that, because you know, we are, when you first get out, you know, you want to believe there's some quick fix, there's some way to like supplement your income, so it's very predatory.
Yes, yes, and that's why it's important to have safe domains like yours, and also something that's, you know, um, appropriate for the time. So the name millennial vets, I mean, that's the bottom line is this, you know, your generation is, you know, I would say, you know, it is the greatest because 20 years of warfare, and you know, your generation held on. And so when people say, oh, millennials, oh, you know, we have to honor Vietnam vets, World War II vets, Korea vets, Persian Gulf War vets, I'm just like, well, I mean, you know, millennials haven't even gotten a parade really, you know, like, you know, they came back to extremely bad economy, you know, the worst economy. Even Vietnam vets came back to like a strong economy. There were union jobs, you know, there were just like a lot of opportunities after each war. And that's, you know, that's the other thing I studied, because I got into a fight with one professor once and I almost had to, you know,
Put them up.
and I didn't, but I didn't. But like he was saying, he was like, "Oh, the GI Bill is for service. That's why we set up the GI Bill." And I was like, "Dude, did you like read? Like, it was all about like preventing riots, like with troops
Hmm.
coming back from the Pacific and Europe. They wanted to give these troops something back, you know, and they weren't going to just like kick off, you know, the people that were already working in these industries. And
Hmm.
so it's like, you know, let's open up the GI Bill. And that's why there was much more flexibility with that type of GI Bill than we have now, because that was done, again, to prevent a riot, you know,
Hmm.
and it was reactionary. So when people think, oh, it's for the government saying, you know, to thank you for your service, it really, that wasn't set up for that. I mean, that was definitely, there's some things regarding service, but it was really to avoid a mass riot, because we had gone through the Depression and we already had a veterans riot during the Depression, you know, the bonus army. in
Mm-hmm.
1932. So, and yeah, and veterans in the U.S. military to stand up for their rights. I mean, it goes back to, and I believe, May 10th, my show on the San Patricio, the Irish American and Germans and freed slaves and Mexican Americans and Mexicans who like fought together because they were Catholics and they were being oppressed. I was a Catholic monk for a number of years. I grew up in the South, and I grew up, seeing the persecution towards Catholics and stuff in the 70s. And, I mean, it wasn't like violent, but it was definitely like in many ways, like a social stigma. Like if you mentioned that you were Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, these Catholic Irish troops and German Catholics and others, they like just went up against their command and everything like that because they were really mistreated. They saw atrocities done on Catholic Mexicans, in the Mexican American War. And, I mean, I'm just, what I try to present is not something to lie about, but this is all like historical facts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I lost a lot of friends, through social media. I also had like a really thriving podcast back in 2016, and I just kept super, super neutral. But when I started talking about like history, people are like, you shouldn't talk about that. And I said, no, I am. Well, I guess we're not going to be friends. I said, I guess we're not going to be friends. And that led to, just a whole lot of people that I truly still love, but because of all this tension we have in our country,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, it recedes into like the veteran community.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I mean you can go into we could go into like the radicalization of veterans and that and how again that vulnerable population can just like attain that new identity of that. But I don't even want to get into it. Kind of going back a little bit, I wanted to go to one of your most recent episodes. Just kind of how uh, certain, I would call them loud veterans in our community, ones that get the most attention, how their storylines, how their lived experience as a veteran sort of impacts the perception of veterans in general.
So I think I should set up categories for these different types. And so like definitely there's one type that's called like I call them like the vet trolls, right? So they're going to look at every like thing that you did in the military, right? And they're going to have their subjective view on that, right? So it's gotten to the point where people are even questioning like David Goggins right now, and
Mm-hmm.
like that guy is just like, he's just a wild man. You know what I mean? It's not like he wanted, all this notoriety. He just happened to get it because he's a badass.
Mm-hmm.
And for people to be like, getting political, like Dan Crenshaw, and other people, it's just like, why don't you ask that person, if you've got an issue with that person and have like a public debate and not just like say something like, oh, his deployment wasn't that tough, or, he's not known for his deployments, saying something like that, I think is just, I don't know. It's just like, it's like poison in our community,
Yeah, it's pretty gross. Yeah, and it just takes away from our veteran community because even me, I did 4 years. Why am I still showing up? Why am I the millennial veteran? Why do I get to be here and still talk about veterans? And it's like, yeah, I bother to do it because there's so many others who have only served 4 years and they feel like they don't have a place in their community because there's people like that say, oh, well, you only did that. Why would you do that? It's just minimizing somebody else's experience when we have so much more in common than we do different. So, yeah, that's
Right. Right. It's starting to turn into this caste system where, like, I did a lot of work in the 90s with Vietnam vets. And yeah, there wasn't an internet, so there were a lot of like people who lied about their records and things like that. There's no doubt that that was happening. But there were a lot of people who did serve, and they would treat, like the special forces guy, the baddest guy in the world that, like, I'm not, who hung out with a guy named Plaster who like helped start Delta Force and Mac was in MACV SOG, one of his associates, like he wouldn't treat, someone who was like a company clerk like crap,
mm-hmm.
like in our era, we'll just trash someone. Oh, you don't have a Ranger tab? And I respect Rangers. I mean, they're like incredible people, but like you did that and God bless you. But, you know, what are you doing now as a veteran? Do you still have that intensity of service? Because I can challenge a lot of people who were hardcore when they wore uniform, and when they get out, it's about hurting other veterans or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, hurting their families or whatever, and or just civilians, just not being like, truly veteran representatives. And I think that's why, I have come up with the concept of a code for readjustment, for veteran readjustment, because I think it's like so important that when folks get out of the service, they still have some type of code to live by.
Yes. Yeah, because when we were in, we had the UCMJ, and it's like when we get out, I mean, we have laws of the country, but just to really, as veterans, society kind of puts us up higher. You've already committed yourself to service once. We we thank you. We honor you. So, how could we uphold that, and what would be included in this code?
Well, since I mean, I'm pretty much the only one that's been talking about this, but watch, all of a sudden everybody's going to be like, oh, that code,
Yeah.
But, the thing, and that always happens, but the thing is, so to start off, I don't think we could have it, bound in any way, but I think it would help us be accountable, right? Like if we had, like, veterans like adopt this code, and then like VA workers also adopt this code. Those who work directly with vets, either in primary care or in mental health services, they're held to a certain type of standard. As far as
Mm-hmm.
like veteran readjustment is going to look like this, and we have 100 principles, maybe not 100, maybe 50 like principles, basic core principles that you can be a part of once you get out. But that gives you, it's like me being I'm part of the Manhattan Draft Board, so I don't get paid for it, but it's a huge honor. I got like nominated, you know Andrew Cuomo. People are gonna be like, oh, he's like hanging out with them. It's like, dude, I got nominated by him and it got signed by Trump. So like, and I'm like a progressive, and I got both of them don't like, my politics,
Mm-hmm.
but my character speaks for that. And I can honestly say that, people who really know me, and that's what I challenge other veterans, know other veterans, because you never know when you're going to need their help. You never know if that veteran is going to be able to call his friend and help you with something. So why are you here like burning bridges and talking badly about vets? Now, I will criticize certain vets. I'm willing to be criticized myself, but if the truth is the truth, again, I was affected when I mentioned, Phil Clay's book, Redeployment. I'm affected by that book. I'm sorry. My stepmother lost her life due to an unjust war, due to chemicals, and I just think, yeah, I feel like it's important for me to share that. And I'll be very honest, I wasn't super close to her, but again, that story, that narrative that you brought out, her story and my dad's story are never going to pretty much circulate. And they supported each other, experiencing a lot of war, and my dad took care of her until she died. And I don't know, that story is not going to make it to Lifetime, but it's worthy of it.
Yeah, absolutely, because there's so many others. When I worked at the House Committee on Veterans Affairs, we would get calls all the time, and that was just so disheartening, because a lot of people didn't sign up, they didn't volunteer like I did for their service. They were drafted. They didn't have any other choice. So those definitely are worthy of Lifetime. I believe so.
Yeah.
So another thing I wanted to talk about was kind of a big thing that people are talking about is recruitments going down. I feel like it's always been an issue, but especially I've been seeing it a lot.
It's been an issue since the 80s. So all these guys, Special Forces, 20 tabs, they're honorable, right? But they're like half my age, And I was in a special operations capable unit when I was prettier and, short hair, when I had short hair and all that kind of stuff 30 years ago, right? But okay, God bless you. You're 20 times tougher than me. God bless you. That's great. I love you. That's great. But bro, what's the issue as far as just being so negative?
Yeah, it's almost like they're using it to drive another point home that resonates with them.
Yeah, because back in the 80s, it was Mothers of America, because it was always a congressman would get involved back then, because Congress had more veterans. They were more sensitive, and you're there. You can see certain things when congressman really cares for vets. He or she's gonna do something. So that was so it was Mothers of America. So it's the drill instructors, Mothers of America, and that was a whole thing of we're not getting enough troops because the military isn't tough enough, because it's not because we can't curse at boot camp. Well, if you want to be a professional, and I was guilty of it when I was in officer training, a Vietnam vet sat me down. I had my nickname for him, Lumpy Legao. His last name was Legao, and he was like a real war hero. I think he was in the book The 13th Valley, I think, something like that about Vietnam. I think it was the 13th Valley, but he was a real deal kind of guy. And I don't know why Gene is putting things, contacting me. Leave me alone. Anyway, sorry. I've got another vet, The thing is that he sat me down and he said, this sergeant major was just if you want to be a professional, you're going to have to clean up your mouth. And I was well, I got this, when I was on active, He was well, as I said, if you want to be a professional, if you want to be an officer and be respected, you're going to have to, clean it up. And I took that. And I recognize the importance of that. But getting back to the issue of recruitment, there was always this thing, even back then, regarding recruitment. And they were so desperate in the 80s to get troops that they set up this whole thing beyond the GI Bill. It was called like the Army College Fund or the Navy College Fund, you know? It's like, you know, hey, you know, it's kind of like the post 9/11 GI Bill. And it was just like we knew like we were going to win the war like against the Soviets, and yet we were still like pumping all this stuff on recruitment. And so a lot of times the agenda is more to kind of like fit into like the military industrial complex, and it's just like this fiction, right? Here we know we're going to defeat the Soviet military, and yet we've got to train the troops, we've got to be scared, we've got to recruit more. And so now you have that now, and now they're saying the military is woke, and I mean, it's just like so far from that. I wish it was. You know it's not woke because the first of all, the military code, the UCMJ, so my code would be different because that was more set up for like discipline. It was like set up, I mean, I'll be honest, I believe it was set up not all the way through, but it was to deal with the whole thing of the fears of having an integrated, you know, military, because it was set up at the time, you know, I believe in 1951. So that was like right, you know, I mean, 47 we integrate, 51 it's like, you know, the Korean War full on, you know, African American troops, Puerto Rican troops, they're like saying, hey, we're part of this. We're like, we're part of this, you know. You can't hide our honor because we're fighting, you know. And the rise of television and all that, you know. Yeah, so they set up that code in many ways, like to control troops in regards to disciplinary action. So it's not something, how can I say, something to go forward with, like to set up a code to have people flourish, right? Because when people mention, you know, that code, it's always being, you get scared, right?
Yeah, you're doing it out of fear.
Right. And so I just think that, you know, when the military, when people recognize that the military isn't woke because, you know, they can slap that UCMJ at any time, and they still do. And the other thing that gets me is this: diversity training, whether it's for people of color or women or you know, folks of different orientation and everything. And it's just like these trainings have been going on for ages, you know, and it has nothing to do with CRT, because I know Tom Cotton put some legislation up. It hasn't gotten approved or anything, but I just think he did it for, you know, like attention, but like against the CRTing of like the military, because it's happening. And if you read it, it's completely ridiculous. Like any type of like training that involves, you know, any type of awareness. I mean, you know this, whether you're in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, you know this. There's a lot of downtime. I mean, you bust your butt in the military, but there's also downtime, right? So you can't tell me that, you know, we get these OSHA trainings, right? We get how many, like, no smoking, you know, in this part, you know, that those trainings and all that. You can't tell me you can't invest 1 hour per quarter, you know, 4 hours a year to just like knowing more about, like, if anything, it's going to help you in the civilian world, because you're going to know like the terms, you're going to know, you know, what the laws are, you know, the laws kind of help you, if anything, you know, whether you are a special population or not. And these people are making such a big deal about these trainings. And the other thing I want to say is, what are the trainings? Again, these fictions. Show me the training books where they're saying, you know, black soldiers are better than white soldiers. You know what I mean? There's no trainings that are being pushed in the military that are promoting that at all.
No. Yeah. I mean, it's again, it's just like
Or women
selected to fit a
soldiers are
certain
better. Yeah, all
narrative.
this that they're taking over. Well, duh, look at society. Women are taking over. And it's not, it's, and I'm
Hmm.
not, I mean, I'm just being real. I had to deal with this, like, it as a director at the VA and hiring people. And I was just like, I have to hire her because she's got more education. She's the she's not a quota. She's got more education than the other candidate that you want. I'm sorry, but I have an obligation, and I'm not gonna like break my obligation because of your little hissy fit
Hmm.
over someone you don't want, who you can't base any type of reality, because those hirings, they're set up like on much like the military promotion system. You have to gain like points and stuff to get like one of
Yeah.
those jobs. Every
Hmm.
civil service job, whether you're like digging a ditch or you're getting like an executive position, it's going to have something like that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, just look at statistics. Look
It
at
is. Yeah, college. It's just a natural thing. It's like this is why I want to set up. Like Andrew Tate has like that whole red pill channel. I want to do like a anti that, like within the vet community, like whatever, like whatever the haters, like anti haters. And I have a lot of friends who like, yeah, because they'll tell me, oh, women are taking over, or people like you are taking over and stuff like that. And it's like, we're still like such a small group. You know what I mean? Like we don't really, these special populations just aren't even close to like, you know, even in like top positions.
hmm
It gets even smaller. You know?
Yeah, and why are you scared?
Yeah, yeah,
That's a real question. And if you're good at what you do, you don't have to worry about it.
right.
But
And just become better. Just become better. That's what I tell my son. Not that he complains about anything, but I just always tell him, do better, be better. That's how you really win.
hmm yes, yeah, exactly. And I feel like you kind of do that a little on your own Facebook page. You have your own kind of channel where you go live and just anything. I feel like we're all kind of benefiting from you being in school and bringing up these topics, because you'll go live and just start talking about them and go off on
Yeah,
your tangents. It's really great.
yeah, like
So
yeah. Did you see the one I did when Andrew Tate first was sent to jail? And so, like, I was a monk. I studied Roman law. So, I mean, so you can't tell me, these guys that come on my walls, and I just like, I block them. Lately I had some guy from the 82nd Airborne, and I was like, dude, I jumped to you. God bless you. You're great, man. But you to hate on Hannah from Special Forces, that wasn't rigged, dude. My best friend's like involved in that, and I
hmm
know he would have told me. And I knew she was, well before, I didn't tell anyone because, I that's a trust thing. But like, I was thinking she's going to get like a lot of hell, just for showing up that way in such a vulnerable place. Just for having character, she's going to get persecuted.
yeah, and so I'm a huge fan of like The Bachelor and Bachelorette, and she was the Bachelorette. You watch it
You
too?
should you should get Brandon Mills. He's part of the Four Horsemen of like Rudy Reyes, Brandon Mills, and Nate Smith and Mike Kim. We were like the New York Four Horsemen. He got on The Bachelor. He was a recon sniper, and and he's a singer. And he got on there, and I think he was like the bad boy. And next thing you know, he got like a contract and stuff. And he got like all these people wanted to interview him and everything. Like,
What
yeah, his name is
season is
Brandon.
this?
It's the one. Listen to Your Heart. I watched every one of them, and I was like, I was like, I'm gonna sue you. Don't talk about my boy Brandon. I'm gonna sue you. Don't do that. Don't. We were getting into all these fights because they were hating on my boy, and I was just like,
You had to defend him in the comments.
I was just like I went on all the websites. I spent, I don't know, like, I don't know, a lot of hours like deflecting all that.
Wait, so where does the monk training come in there? What would you be supposed to be doing when that comes out of you?
Well, I'm supposed to find, a puppy dog place in my mind and find Jesus, but sometimes I can't do that. And the thing is that with veterans, it's just like I have something to do, and I'll be honest, I do think like my grade point average is going to go down a little bit because I've just had like a lot of stress in my life. But we just have to accept that our lives are, whatever we've gone through. And I know this because I've seen it in so many different people after the military. Some type of readjustment issue, and people, they don't have it right when they say PTSD. And I saw, one guy, he was on a show and he was talking about, the whole thing about PTSD. And I was just like, there's so many other issues that the VA recognizes and that like the medical community recognizes. And these guys are professionals, not like your quackery guys that are just out there. These guys and gals are professionals. They're licensed, they're doctors, and they say, that being in the military in its own carries a certain level of readjustment, and you just have to, be attuned to that. Like how are you being affected and getting help for that, and it doesn't mean you have to be 100% or 10% or whatever percent. It just means what I'm saying is go get the help that you need for that time, because you signed the contract. The military is responsible for you. So guys like Dan Crenshaw, they'll make it seem as though, oh, if you're a veteran and you apply for disability or anything like that, that it's like a sin. And it's like, no, it's your right as an American. And not only that, it's, he didn't say it directly. It's just the show. There's one show, if you look up Dan Crenshaw and Joe Rogan, and he's talking about like when he was getting out of the Navy, he was seeing people, who were getting med boarded out, and he didn't feel like they should have been med boarded, but he doesn't know, like, all right, he's this hotshot SEAL. I feel bad he lost an eye, and he is a real war hero, but it's like, dude, you don't know what that person went through, like on a ship. You don't know what that person went through, like on that flight line. Like, you need to just like put yourself out of it and let that person go through the American process of democracy, due process of the law, because that's what we have. It should be every act, and that's why, I won two whistleblowers, and it comes from actually understanding Roman law. What I was going to say with like these vets getting on the side of Andrew Tate and all these like bro guys, it's like they don't understand Roman law, and what's his name? Andrew Tate is in Romania, so influenced by Roman law, and so it's just like I always say, due process of the law is our right as American citizens, not as a veteran. Your right to apply for any government program is because you're a citizen, and it's part of due process of the law. And we don't take advantage of that, and that's why you see guys like who I saw, Vietnam veteran, no doubt Agent Orange, died prematurely, beautiful wife, beautiful wife, beautiful kids, and he was like, I didn't know I could apply for this, and he was like on a destroyer off the coast of Vietnam, and they were firing rounds, and SAM missiles, surface to air missiles were, hitting, near the ship and stuff like that. He got his combat action ribbon and everything like that. And like, next thing you know, it's like, 2007 and he dies, and he never got a chance to apply for his benefits.
Wow, and it's kind of that culture of pride that's carried on past the service, and also that sense of shame, and that it hurts your ego to ask for help, and we're told not to ask for help, but that's absolutely what you should do. It's what's best, not only for your scenario but for society as a whole, because if you're taking advantage of that, you're going to contribute back to society. So if you look at it that way. But we are coming up on time, so I wanted you to.
No. Yeah.
I know.
I'm thinking about the movie, the 80s movies. I'm trying to think of an 80s movie that said that. You can't. I'll think of it, and then I'll let you know.
Let me know. I can't think of it. But yeah, I just wanted everyone to know where they can find you, and you have like 1, 2, 3 podcasts going on. What's all going on with you?
So there's Veteran, etc., and it's with Coming Home Well, and they're awesome. You know why? They're awesome because they're just like into letting me do these like audio essays, and so I could get really into like the research, right? Because there are a lot of podcast channels that they don't want presenters to do like essays, but like Coming Home Well, they're just like awesome. So you can look at cominghomewell.com and subscribe, folks. It's growing. There's like, and if you don't like My Ugly Mug, there's so many great shows out there. Like, and they do shows like on service dogs, on the family. Like, I think their network is like probably the best network because it's got so many great people. Even the former deputy of like the VA, Dr. Paul Lawrence, he's like, he's part of it, and he was like on my show. You should get him on. I mean, I really love them, and they're great. And so so Veteran, etc., that usually comes on Sunday nights. So I just released one on veteran entertainment, military entertainment. And so we're going to talk about Top Gun. But yeah, like, it's like a good channel. And so Veteran, etc., you could YouTube it and you can find it there. And then there's once a month, there's a show called Veterans of Color, VOC, and it's not a political show. So like, it's not because they're gonna say, "Oh, you're doing the training."
You have to say that.
He's like the veteran zombie brainwasher. He's the woke guy. So it's not political. It's historical and cultural, and it's basically like just trying to find different parts of history that aren't really spoken about, like that Irish unit. Like it's going to come out March 10th. I'm happy because it's going to be like March 17th. And what I'm, though Major Riley was not an African American, he was open to like Mexicans joining the unit and African Americans to join the unit. And that's why I'm saying, as much as we've had strife in this country for being different, we've also, we have like some pretty great stories of people like coming together, for like a good cause.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we need more of those stories because, like you said before, we just learned so much from history, and we can find a lot of answers in those. So I look forward to that episode.
Well, thanks for having me on, and it was great. And next time I will I don't know. I'll call my son and he'll take care of, the whole, you can zoom in through him and then he'll like do, set it up,
No,
he's like my personal assistant,
I think this worked out great. I mean, we got you on, we got you. You're not sideways, we can see you.
Yeah. I'm
But
just propped up.
yeah, no, it looks awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mike, so much for coming
Thank
on
you.
Vet
Take care.
Chats.
All
Thank you
right.
for everyone who joined. I hope you enjoyed this if you're watching the replay or on the podcast. And yeah, I hope you have a great week.
Thanks. Same to you.
Take
Goodbye,
care.
everyone.